What is going on, everybody? And welcome to the Yankees on Deck podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cunningham, and it's great to be back. I took a little hiatus from doing the podcast, but I'm still on Instagram at Yankees on Deck. I'm also on TikTok as well. So, using both those platforms, I'm on Twitter too a little bit, Matt Cunningham. But, you know, I wanted to come back and obviously record. I took a little bit of a break from the podcasting just because in between the World Series and all that, I was traveling and it got hectic. Obviously, the World Series, that was gut wrenching, but a lot of fun at the same time. And the Yankees making it that far was a thrill. And obviously, you can see my background's a little bit different if you're watching on YouTube. I have this Yankee flag right behind me, which is pretty cool. So I'm trying to set it up a little bit like a man cave. Hopefully, some point I want to do live streams on here, like Yankee game live streams, and we could chat, interact, and have a good time. And so, yeah, I mean, that's basically where I'm at now. And so I wanted to come on here and just talk about the Yankees offseason thus far. What they've done here. So at this point, in the post Soto era to start, obviously. And I mean, we know what happened there. The Yankees were very competitive in their offer to Soto. They went up to 16 years for 760. Mets weren't getting outbid, though. Steve Cohen was not getting outbid. He landed the big fish, 15 years, 765. And also that deal, has incentives to go up to over 800 million. There's an opt-out, I believe, after the fifth year, and then Soto can opt back in, and that contract can grow to over $800 million. So the Mets considerably outbid the Yankees on that. I will admit that it sucks because we all loved watching Soto, and I don't want to make this episode all about Soto and just being upset about Soto because it's whatever. I mean, it happened well over a month ago. It is what it is. It's in the past. I wish him the best of luck, with the Mets. But it sucks because at the same time, like Soto, he was such a huge piece, and getting us to the World Series with that home run in the ALCS was just really a cool moment in my fandom. And a lot of Yankee fans, around my age who weren't around for the dynasty years, don't remember 2009. So it means a lot. And I thank Juan Soto for his contributions in the short time that he was here. I wish him the best of luck in Queens, and no hard feelings. It's just, he went where, he got compensated the best, and that's fine. That's totally fine. I'm not ill will or anything like that. But now the task for the Yankees, obviously moving forward from that, was trying to make the best pivot they can. And I'm going to come out and flat out say I've been seeing a lot of Yankee fans saying, "Oh, the Yankees have done a great job replacing Juan Soto with what they've done." First off, I might get a lot of heat for this, but I don't think you can replace Juan Soto. And I've had this feeling since the very beginning, just when you look at the market. But I'm going to say the Yankees did make a good pivot. Going out and signing one of the top free agent pitchers on the market, behind Corbin Burns and Max Fried. And the Yankees always need pitching, and Garrett Cole's getting up there in age. And I think Max Fried can slot nicely behind Garrett Cole in that rotation. And, I think that was obviously a great pivot because, if you're not going to get as much offense, then the philosophy is, well, then you got to bolster up the pitching and limit fewer runs. And that's what the Yankees have done in large part in this offseason, as well as add a few bats, and we'll get to those. But look, I'm going to come out and say that, I think the Yankees did the best pivot they could do. Juan Soto, the Mets weren't getting outbid. Soto's best season came as a New York Yankee. He had a 7.9 WAR, the most home runs he hit in his career at 41, 288 batting average, 109 RBIs. I mean, hitting in front of Aaron Judge. I mean, what could be better than that? And the only other time he posted that many runs batted in was 2023 with the Padres, and that was it. And so, but again, Soto's 26 years old, all right? He possibly couldn't have even hit his peak yet. So I understand, obviously, where the Mets are coming from, giving him all that money. But at the end of the day, Soto, he's an amazing hitter. That's what the Mets are paying for. He's, not as good of a base runner. outfield, it can be rough at times, not a good defender, but the Mets are paying for his bat, and he's young, 26 years old, probably a future Hall of Famer, no doubt. I mean, his number's probably going to get retired as a Met, 22. And let's not act like Yankee fans that if he came back to us, we would be up in arms and saying, yep, 22 is going to be in Monument Park one day, because, yeah, it probably was. It probably was going to if he did, in fact, stay. He's that good of a player. He is a future Hall of Famer. But it just sucks, and at the end of the day, we got to move on. I mean, I bought the 22 jersey. Someone else will get it, so I'll bring it out of the closet eventually. But, yeah, so I don't want to spend this whole time just, being, reminiscent about Soto, because that's not what this episode's about. But obviously can't film Yankees offseason review without talking about losing Juan Soto to some extent. So, now we got that out of the way, and let's talk about what the Yankees did in their pivot and trying to do the best they can to, move on from Soto. So their first move, obviously, was signing Max Fried, and this was the Yankees' immediate pivot. They lost Soto, and they didn't really sweat it too much. They got to work. They signed Max Fried to a record deal for a left-handed pitcher. 8 years, $218 million. That's a little over $27 million per year. Now, they bumped it up to the 8 years because they wanted to lower the AAV, average annual value per year, because of the luxury tax. So instead of giving them 6 or 7, the Yankees bumped it to 8. And it was actually kind of funny because Max Fried's agent, he said, if you offer us 1 year over the record, because this is a record for left-handed pitcher, the record was David Price at $217 million. And apparently his agent just said, if you offer us 218, $1 million over, you got a deal. And that's what the Yankees did. So pretty funny, scenario there. But to get into Max Fried, he is an excellent pitcher, an excellent ground ball pitcher. He has an array of stuff. And his biggest pros, I would say, obviously, you're getting him at a nice AAV, $27 million per year. I mean, in this market, that's a steal, considering his walk and strikeout rates. They're slightly above average, but he's not a strikeout pitcher. Walk rate, 6.4%, so that's good. He limits the walks. Strikeout rate, slightly above average at 23.8%, but he's a big-time ground ball pitcher. And in Yankee Stadium, that's a plus. He has a 59% ground ball rate. He's got an array of pitches to work with: four-seamer, sinker, changeup, A-plus curveball. He actually carved up the Yankees earlier this year, and it was not pretty. I mean, he moves the ball up, down, in, out. I mean, that's just a prime pitcher who you want. That's their forte, and he's that guy. His pitching style, because of that, can age really well. He doesn't need to rely on velocity. He relies on movement. But when he needs to dial it up, he will. He's got the fastball at 95 plus in his back pocket when he needs to. And he did that against the Yankees earlier this year. He blew 95 fastball up in the zone by Aaron Judge. So that proves to be effective. I mean, all of his other pitches are elevated and more valuable because he has those array of pitches. And therefore, the 95, it explodes out of his hand more. It makes it seem faster because he's got his off speed to play around with and toy with. So at the end of the day, I mean, he's a pitcher. I mean, you think when scouts say the difference between a thrower and a pitcher, he's a pitcher, a guy that goes up there, spins the ball, knows how to spin it, knows where to place it, can place it where he wants, and gets you out. And he was a big reason why the Braves won the World Series in 2021 with that rotation. Houston was the better offensive team, but good pitching beats good hitting. And that's what Max Fried did in the game clincher. I believe it was Game 6 of the 2021 World Series. He shut down Houston's lineup, formidable lineup, and they were the World Series champs. So I really like this guy. But obviously, yeah, there are concerns with him, considering he's getting the largest contract ever for a left-handed pitcher. There's some injury concerns. He's seen the IL 7 times in the last 4 seasons. He's made over 30 starts just once in that span, although 2023 was the only year since the COVID year in 2019 where he pitched less than 160 innings. So good and bad with that. Obviously, injury risk, you don't like to see that. He's a little bit higher of an injury risk than another pitcher. Also, the fact that he's turning 31 in 2 days and he's getting an 8-year deal. But an injury risk is always high for pitchers, obviously, elbows, shoulders, whatnot have you. So at the end of the day, this is a guy I think, regardless of all that, can age really well in terms of the type of pitcher he is. He doesn't have to rely on velocity. You have other guys like Corbin Burns on the market that are known for their velocity. Max Fried's not known for his velocity. So I think that can age well. And a good comparison I'll make is CC Sabathia. CC Sabathia, he was a guy before coming to the Yankees when he was with Cleveland and then Milwaukee. He really relied on his velocity to get hitters out. And then obviously, age catches up to everyone. And as he got older, he realized that, hey, I can't blow guys away anymore. So let me rely more on my off-speed stuff. And that's what he had to do to adapt. And when he signed with the Yankees and got older, that's what he had to do. And he was still an effective pitcher, later in his years at times because of that, because he learned how to spin the ball. He learned how to rely more on off-speed and not, fastball velocity. So that's huge. And Max Fried knows how to do that. So that gives me a lot of confidence, despite the injury history, that he can age well as he, gets up there in his contract, 34, 35, 36, and still be a relevant pitcher. Maybe, obviously he's not going to be the same pitcher as he once was as he gets older. I mean, age catches up to everybody, but he could still be somewhat of a serviceable pitcher, maybe in years 6, 7, 8, and, thrown in the bullpen or whatever. But that honestly doesn't matter. The Yankees are in win now mode, and they got one of the top pitchers on the market, first move off the bat, quickly pivoting from Soto. And you look at his baseball savant, pitching run value, guys don't hit him very hard, average exit velocity, just 86 miles an hour. His whiff rates are, closer to around average, a little bit slightly above. But again, that's not his forte. He gets a lot of ground balls, which is huge in Yankee Stadium, a hitter's ballpark like that. So, yeah, I love the move, and I really like it. We need it in our lefty, and now Rodon can slot more to like a 3 or a 4 starter, which I think is more perfect fit for him because he's more up and down. And then you can have Clark Schmidt at the back end of that as well. So I think it fits nice. And, it allowed the Yankees to then later trade a starting pitcher, in Nestor, to get Devin Williams, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So trade number 2, I'm not going in any particular order, obviously. I think it was Fried, then Williams, and then Bellinger, but I'm just going to start with Bellinger now. So Cody Bellinger, the Yankees traded for Cody Bellinger, and they sent the Cubs right-handed pitcher Cody Petit, who I really like. Cody Petit was a guy the Yankees acquired last offseason. I believe it was off waiver wires, and he's not like a hard thrower or anything. I believe he's like 28, 29, but he's another guy that can really spin the ball, lots of good movement. I watched a couple of his starts this past year. He made a couple of spot starts, one of them versus Cleveland. He was really good. He was moving the ball all over the place against, a decent Cleveland team. And the Yankees, however, they're on the hook for $25 million of Cody Bellinger's 2025 salary. He has an opt-out after the 2025 season that he can use at his discretion if he chooses. So he can choose to opt in or opt out after this year, and that's going to be depending on his performance. If he does really well, he's going to opt out and go for more money. If he doesn't, he's going to opt back in. That option will kick in again for $25 million next year. The positives with this. Now, Yankee Stadium will boost his power numbers. I do strongly believe that. He had 18 home runs last year while, suffering from injury. And it was, I believe it was late June or July, he suffered a hand injury and it kind of messed him up, towards the latter half of the year. So he was playing hurt and he managed to hit 18 home runs. This is on a down year too. He's not the MVP type player that he was once back in 2019. Okay. But he's still a solid player nonetheless. He's a plus base runner, great defender. He can play center field, cover a lot of range. He can play all 3 outfield positions. And this is a guy who, prior to, last year he was a 2.2 WAR player, which isn't terrible. In 2023, he was over a 4 WAR player. That's wins above replacement. And he hit over 307 batting average. I mean, he was killing it. And then he got hurt this past year with the hand stuff. That limited his play in the second half, of course. So you have to think that, if that is all rested up and healed, he comes into Yankee Stadium. He's a left-handed hitter with pop, the short porch. And they also said, too, if he was playing in Yankee Stadium last year, 6 of his home runs, 6 of his fly balls, per se, that were in Wrigley Field would have been out in Yankee Stadium. So he'd have 6 more home runs. That would put him at 24. So I could realistically see Cody Bellinger hitting between 20 to 25 home runs in Yankee Stadium next year. Maybe even 30. If he has a great year, he could hit 30. It's not out of the question. But I think like around 25 ballpark is more realistic. And I'd be thrilled with that. Honestly, a little bit of a bounce back year. Say he's like a 3-WAR player, hits 25 home runs, can drive in, say, close to 100. I mean, 85. I would be thrilled with that. Sign me up for that. Hit 260, 265, and bat behind Judge and Stan. I'd love that. I would really like that. And I think that's definitely very possible and feasible. And the nice thing about Bellinger is he's not only versatile in the outfield, he can play first base. So if Goldschmidt needs a day off, say Ben Rice is struggling, he needs a day off, you can easily take Bellinger from center or wherever he's playing a corner spot and put him at first base. The other benefit, too, is it allows Judge to go back to his normal position in right field. Judge is not a center fielder. He played the position all right, but his best numbers obviously are in right field, especially as he's getting older. You're going to want to, not want as much wear and tear on him. So Bellinger could play center. You can move Judge back to right, or you could put Bellinger in left to cover more ground in Yankee Stadium potentially, and then Dominguez in center and Judge in right. I mean, you could do either or. But in terms of the outfield alignment, Bellinger just makes it a lot more easier. It makes them a better defensive team, of course, as well. That can't be denied. And the potential is there with the bat for improvement, no doubt. So Cody Bellinger and Brian Cashman basically summarized it best. I mean, he said and I quote, he's an above-average athlete. He's an above-average defender at first. And in the outfield, he can run the bases well, and his swing is built for Yankee Stadium. And I agree. I mean, 2023, we were watching this guy. I remember I went to Yankees Cubs. I think it was either June or July. It was in the summer. And he hit a ball off Carlos Rodon into the second deck, and he crushed it. And I was like, shit, man, we got to trade for this guy at the trade deadline. Trade deadline was coming up. And, Yankees couldn't pull a trigger because Cubs were asking for a lot, of course, selling high on him. And yeah, but I just remember thinking, oh man, that swing would be perfect for Yankee Stadium. And now the Yankees got him. Had a bit of a down year, but even in a down year, he's still not a bad player by any means. So, and that was with him dealing with injury. So, and you look at his Braid charts, it's very favorable to Yankee Stadium. You look at Baseball Savant. Yes, his hard hit rate was down a little bit last year, obviously, but again, the injury, and I think there's a lot of potential in there. I really do. He's a fly ball hitter too. Some people are comparing this to Alex Verdugo, but Alex Verdugo, he's not a fly ball hitter. Alex Verdugo hit a lot of doubles with Boston, but it just didn't work out. It didn't work out. Alex Verdugo is a good left fielder defensively, but offensively, he just didn't cut it. He doesn't have the kind of power that Cody Bellinger has. He's never had that forte. So I really don't like that comparison at all, honestly. The thing that worries me about Bellinger is he's had a lot of up and down years. I mean, if you look at his baseball reference, I mean, when he won MVP in 2019, he was a 8.6 WAR player. He was incredible, over 300 batting average. He hit 47 home runs. And then the next year, he just plateaued a bit. He hit 239, only 12 home runs. But that was the COVID year, to be fair. But then 2021, he just completely fell off a cliff. He hit 165, and he just wasn't himself, 10 home runs. But then, we saw a bit of a resurgence. The next year, he was a little bit better, but not great at 210. And then 2023, he hit 307 just out of nowhere. And, this is a guy who's had his ups and downs. And look, to be fair, I think there's a good aspect as well. And his dad, Clay Bellinger, played for the Yankees during the Yankees dynasty years from, I believe it was 98 to early 2000s, won a couple rings with the Yankees. And, his dad wasn't a star player. He was more like a role player by any means. But, hey, he's been there, done that. He can be there for his son, give him advice. I'm sure he's super stoked about it. So, yeah, that's really, where we're at this point. And, I wouldn't like give the Yankees an A on their pivot. I don't think you could get an A because how do you replace Juan Soto? You can't. But in terms of what they've been able to do, add multiple pieces, use the money that they were going to use on just one player and Juan Soto and use it on multiple guys. I got to give them credit for that, at least in the way they did it, because I'm not really sure if there's another better way they could have done it out there on the market per se, as of what they've done so far. And so now I want to jump into obviously Devin Williams, and the Yankees went and traded for a closer, Devin Williams, that they desperately needed. They desperately needed a closer. Clay Holmes goes to the Mets. I wish Clay Holmes good luck, but Clay Holmes was not a closer. And I've said that repeatedly over and over again on this podcast. But it's actually kind of funny because my dad, so when the Yankees lost Soto, I talked to my dad and I was just like, kind of just like venting a little bit, just like pissed that we lost him. Because, Soto was a guy, I really like the number 22. It just has sentimental value to me. And Soto wore 22. And just, you watch these guys all year long. And I know it was just 1 year, but you get like sentiment and what he did for the team and sending them to the World Series and doing all that. It sucked, man. It sucked. I mean, everybody was saying Monument Park. So I was venting to my dad, and my dad was like, oh, like they gotta move on. They gotta move on. He was right. And he's like, we really need a starting pitcher and we really need a closer. And what do the Yankees do? They go out, they sign Max Fried, starting pitching, and then they go out and trade for Devin Williams. So it's like it was pretty funny. They the two things my dad said they desperately needed in the post-Soto era, they did. And he was right. But I just thought that was incredibly funny that it just happened that way. Immediately after he said that, that's what happened. And, so I want to give him a little credit for that. But anyway, I just thought that was funny. But now to Devin Williams, I mean, I really like Devin Williams. And I know he's struggled in the postseason, last wild card, giving up the home run to Pete Alonso, but supposedly he was tipping his pitches. I heard that, like the glove movements, he was tipping. Not to discredit what Pete Alonso did. I mean, that was pretty badass, but it's such a small sample size with him in the postseason that I'm not really gonna, fret over that. The bulk of what Devin Williams has done as a closer for the Brewers is astounding. All right. I mean, you look at his numbers here. I mean, every year pretty much he has an ERA under 2 except for 2021. And I mean, you look at this guy and he comes in, he's lights out. 36 saves in 2023. He had 14 this past year in 2024, but the one issue is he got hurt. He had back issues and he missed a good chunk of time. I mean, that's the one concerning thing about this guy is, okay, he had this back issue this past year. Is he good? Like, supposedly he's now healthy, but will that hold up? Will he be good for the whole year? Because we basically have him for 1 year until he's a free agent. He's a free agent after this year. He's making around $8 million. So that's really the only concern. But you look at him, he's got a good fastball, a devastating changeup, one of the best changeups, if not the best changeup in baseball. It just falls off a cliff. It's disgusting. And you're looking at this guy and you see average, slightly above average fastball, elite changeup. He's a high strikeout reliever in the pen, formidable closer in Milwaukee, and the ERA keeps it low like a closer should. And, yes, you have the back issues, but strikes out 13.3 batters per 9 innings. That's freaking excellent. And he's in his walk year. So he knows, like, hey, I got to stay healthy. I got to produce. I want to go out and get my contract. So he knows what's at stake. That's why I like players in their walk year, especially Juan Soto. Like, Juan Soto going in his walk year, like, yeah, man, you got to keep it up. And I got to have my best year this year going into my walk year. And he did. He had his best year hitting in front of Aaron Judge. But, like, players know what's at stake. Like, pressure's on. And I like that because it's motivating. And I also like it too because Luke Weaver was a perfect closer for us. He got burnt out a bit in the ALCS in the World Series, but he really carried us in the second half. I mean, my goodness. And he was great as a setup man. And then he stepped into the closer role beautifully. But I like Luke Weaver better as a setup man. I just do. I think his role as a setup guy when he would come in and be like a stopgap for an inning or two was perfect. And now that you have a guy not named Clay Holmes who can literally be his 1A, like following him and shut down the door, it's perfect. It's perfect. I mean, you can't recreate Mariano Rivera, but it's been so long since the Yankees have had a formidable closer, a guy that comes in, you're like, all right, yep, this game's pretty much over. Clay Holmes, you never had that. Clay Holmes, he was always coming in and rolling the dice. You never knew if he was going to blow it or shut it down. You didn't know what Clay Holmes you were going to get that day. He was so up and down. It was exhausting. And I wish him the best of luck with the Mets. But my goodness, his command, he just had no command. He had no command for a closer. You need a closer to come in, throw strikes, shut down the door, 1, 2, 3, quick as you can. Devin Williams is a guy that can do that. And for 1 year, I like it because he knows going into his walk year, he's got to produce if he's going to get the most money he can get for agency. So I like both those ends to it. And the Yankees didn't really give up much. They gave up Nestor Cortez, who's like a third or fourth starter, nice starter, and credit to Nestor. He was great this year out of the bullpen when they moved him there. I watched him pitch in Chicago. I went to Wrigley in September. He came out of the bullpen. He was fantastic. But that's not a guy I'm really losing sleep over when the Yankees just signed Max Fried. So I'm fine with that. And then infield prospect Caleb Durbin, who I really liked. And Brian Cashman was hyping him up. And when that's another thing in the baseball front offices. When the GM is coming out just on any particular day talking about a prospect or this player and hyping him up, you know he's getting ready for a big trade. And Brian Cashman was doing that a couple weeks prior. I saw it when I was at school. Came out talking about Caleb Durbin. Oh, we really like this guy, Caleb Durbin. Arizona Fall League. He was crushing it. Great prospect, 24 years old. Picked him up on waivers from the Braves. He was just doing that on a random Tuesday. And when a GM's doing that, he's setting up for a big trade. And the Yankees were. They were setting up for a big trade. Devin Williams came out of nowhere. But you know that that's the mindset. Like, I'm going to hype this guy up. You know, he's a good – and it's nothing that's not true. Caleb Durbin's a great prospect, but he's an infield prospect. He's 24 years old. Good bat-to-ball skills, can run, versatile. Again, but we didn't really know his role on the team this year because we got Peraza, we got Cabrera, we got Jazz, and Gleyber Torres just left. Like, he was a little bit out of sorts, so enough for the Yankees are like, all right, we can trade him. He's a good trade chip here to get a closer that we need. So I like it. I think it was a good trade for both sides, honestly. And, you know, I think it's a good 1-2 punch with Luke Weaver. I love it. So, you know, yeah, that's basically my feeling on it. And now I want to go on to the Yankees' most recent acquisition in Paul Goldschmidt. Now, I wasn't a fan of the Paul Goldschmidt move at first, and largely because of his age. He's 37 years old. And, you know, when you think about, you know, Rizzo's younger than him, all right? And we saw Rizzo's decline, but in fairness, Rizzo's was more, I think, due to the concussion and then also the hand injury he had this past year. But the concussion really screwed him up. If you look at his stats before and after, it's just sad. It really is. I think he never fully recovered from that. And also being a guy in your mid-30s, I mean, it's tough. It really is. And Rizzo, he's 35, okay? And Goldschmidt's 37. But Rizzo, we saw a steady decline. I mean, if we're comparing the two players, okay, Paul Goldschmidt had a down year, right? And he's 37. But if we're comparing the two players, okay, Paul Goldschmidt in 2024, and this is in a down year, had a 1.3 WAR, hit 22 home runs for the Cards, 245 batting average, drove in 65, on base percentage over 300. Anthony Rizzo had a 0.2 WAR. Yankees were getting no production at first base. this past year. And Ben Rice came up, had a hot streak for a week, and then fell off. That was the Yankees' first base production this year. It was pathetic. Rizzo hit 228 with 8 home runs. Now, granted, Rizzo did, pick it up in the playoffs, but it was too late at that point. We had no production out of the position that year. So with Paul Goldschmidt, who, yes, is 37, he's old, but if he could duplicate this down year, you got to be satisfied with that. And it's just because the position has been a disaster for the Yankees of late. It's been a disaster. Rizzo was great for us at one point, before the concussion, and he's gotten older and it hasn't been good. So I'm not so down on that. And I feel like that's valuable. I feel like, Ben Rice needs an older guy teaching him the position, not just offensive stuff like hitting and all that, but how do you actually play the position? Paul Goldschmidt's a Gold Glove winner. He's been there, done that with Arizona and St. Louis. Now he's in New York. And he took less money to come here. He had higher offers from other teams. He took 1 year, $12.5 million because he wanted to come here. And I think that speaks volumes. And maybe it's going to be a disaster. It very well could because of his age. But it's 1 year. It's 1 year. All right, then you move on. It was kind of like this past year with Verdugo. Like, I know how bad Verdugo was, but it was like, all right, year's over. We're done. He ain't coming back. I hope he's not coming back. But, that's basically just how it is. That's how you have to look at it. And there's just not a whole lot of options out there. The Yankees were not going to entertain signing Pete Alonso for a number of reasons that I really don't feel like getting into, but that was never a possibility. And the Yankees kind of addressed that. Like, yeah, we're not in on Pete Alonso. I think Pete Alonso is going to go back to the Mets or he's going to go somewhere else. Like, there's no, that wasn't even, I didn't even think about that for a second. But the other upside with Goldschmidt, right, is he's a solid player. 2022, 2023, he was a solid player those past 2 years. Outside of 2024, 2022, he won an MVP. He was the NL MVP. So he had a down year last year. He's getting older. But you look at it, it's a 1 year deal. Let's see how it works out. And yeah, so that basically wraps up just like the offseason. And if I had to give it a grade right now, I would say the Yankees pivot. I would grade it a B. And I think that's the highest grade. Damn, that was a loud burp. Sorry. I think that's the highest grade the Yankees could get is a B right now for the offseason because Juan Soto is a generational talent, and you can't replace that this offseason. This offseason, let's be honest, the market, it's not great. Next year's offseason will be better when you got guys like Tucker and Guerrero out in the market. But let's just be completely honest. There's not a lot out there. All right. And I know people have entertained too Nolan Arenado. Do you really want Nolan Arenado and, 2 years left on that contract? On top of this year, at his age, 33, and he's been declining offensively. And yes, I know he's an amazing defender at third base, but look, age catches up with you. And I don't want a guy in his mid-30s for 3 guaranteed years. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not. We tried that with Josh Donaldson. And if you look at the numbers, at this point in their careers, Josh Donaldson, his numbers were better than Arenado. Believe it or not. Like, go look. I actually looked and I made a post about it on Yankees on Deck. And I'm like, why do people want Nolan Arenado? I know the market sucks. But at the end of the day, do not hamstring yourselves again with a guy in his mid-30s for multiple years. Please don't do it. And look, I was the biggest fan of Nolan Arenado, right? I don't say these things to be an asshole and to these players. I have the utmost respect for guys like Nolan Arenado, these players who were once great. But let's be real, age catches up to everybody, and I don't want to get a guy because of what he was in the past. That's terrible. And there's always A prime example, right, was when the Angels signed Albert Pujols. Albert Pujols, Hall of Fame player, amazing, one of the best power hitters of this generation, along the lines of Bonds and Musial and like all those guys, right? Aaron, you can list them all, right? Pujols is right there with them. And I'm talking power hitters, but the Angels were paying for what they were never going to get. They were paying for past production that they knew they weren't going to get, but it was the allure. And it's Albert Pujols. And, the contract was terrible. Like most contracts in baseball are long term for a guy already in his 30s. So I just don't think it's the right move. I think, and I'm going to tell you my plan. I'm gonna get into my plan. So I don't want Nolan Arenado. I don't want him. And it's not a disrespect to him. He was once great. But I don't think having Nolan Arenado for the next few years is going to make this team any better. I really don't. I really don't. And you can cite the age. You can cite the recent decline offensively. Yes, the defense is still there, but that's going to decline at some point as well. Look, Josh Donaldson was a great player for us on defense, but his bat rapidly declined. And you could see that with his years in Minnesota. You could see that. There were signs. And there's signs with Arenado. So, I can understand why people want him because we are desperate for another infielder, whether, it's third base or second base. And it would be most ideal to get a third baseman because Jazz Chisholm is not a third baseman. He had to learn the whole position this past year. It was a learning curve. I'd rather Jazz just play his natural position at second base, which I think is what the Yankees want to do. And I agree with that. So what do the Yankees do? Well, this is how they have to finish the offseason. They got to get a third baseman. And they have to unload some payroll to do it. They're currently at $273 million. And the competitive balance tax threshold is $241 for 2025. Last year, they were over 300, so at least they're under that. But they got to shed some payroll before they add in another name. How do you do that? Well, you could trade Marcus Stroman. He's owed $18.3 million this year, but I don't know if a team's taking on that entire contract. I mean, I doubt it, but maybe you could get a team to eat half of it, and then you could have other names that you move. Trent Grisham's making $5 million. You have Mark Leiter Jr. making almost $3 million. So there's options for them to unload payroll, and I think that's the next move. They have to unload payroll before they add another name. They have to do it. And then they need to add another infielder, obviously. So either second baseman or third baseman, but I prefer a third baseman so Jazz can play second. And you got various options thrown out there for infielders. We had Arenado's name thrown out there for third base. We had Luis Ariz thrown out there past couple of weeks for second base. Jorge Polanco. Going down the list. Brendan Donovan, Brendan Rodgers, Kike Hernandez, Whit Merrifield. And a lot of that list sucks. And they're not getting Alex Bregman because Alex Bregman wants a long-term deal. He's with Scott Boras. And, they floated out there. I don't know who did, but someone floated out there a short-term deal. That's not happening. You're with Boras. You want a long-term deal. Alex Bregman, he's 30 years old. I mean, he wants a long-term deal. This is it for him. He's not going to go back into free agency when he's in his mid-30s. This is his time to cash out, and he wants to cash out. So I don't see Bregman as an option, even though the Yankees liked him. But they're not going to give him a long-term deal. They're just not going to do that because of the luxury tax. So these are the other options that I just mentioned. And one thing I'm going to point out is I don't understand why people are so against Luis Ariz. I understand part of it because of the defense. The defense sucks. His defense is not good. It's actually worse than Gleyber Torres, if you can believe it or not, at second base. But he's an amazing leadoff hitter, amazing contact hitter. He's like Tony Gwynn. The guy does not swing and miss. I think he struck out like less than 50 times this year. And I'm pretty sure he went like 2 or 3 weeks at one point without striking out. I mean, he is incredible bat to ball skills. And that one con, obviously, he's not good defensively. But he's a left-handed hitter in Yankee Stadium. That's always a plus. And he can hit leadoff. I mean, the Yankees, that's another thing. Who is hitting leadoff for the Yankees? I don't know. Could be Jazz. Could be Volpe. I don't know. But he slots perfectly at leadoff. He gets on base, hits for a high average. You have Judge behind him. I mean, that's honestly kind of scary. And you're running at that point. Everybody comparing him to Gleyber Torres because defensively, that's fine. But there's literally people on Yankees Twitter saying, oh, I'd rather just have Gleyber Torres at this point. Are you kidding me? This guy is a 2-time batting champion. He's going to win another one. He hits over 300. How many guys do you see today hitting well over 300 every year? Never happens. The game's changed. You don't have Rod Carews and Tony Gwynns anymore like you used to. This is incredibly valuable, especially in the playoffs. Now, sure, he doesn't hit the ball incredibly hard. His hard hit percentages, you look at the advanced metrics, not great. So you're like, well, a lot of this is probably luck, this and that. But frankly, I don't give a shit. The guy knows how to put bat to ball. And in the playoffs, that's huge. In critical moments, we have runners in scoring position. That's critical. And I just think that's so undervalued in today's game. You know, we sacrifice for swing and miss and home runs. And yes, the long ball does win you games. But there's certain critical moments where you just need a sac fly. You need a base hit. And this is the guy you want coming up. So people are poo-pooing it like it's a terrible move. You compare it to everything else out there, it'd actually be a pretty damn good move, I think. Granted, yes, I know the Yankees have to get better defensively because of the World Series, all that stuff. I know that. And I know that's a con, and it's a big one. But what he provides you, don't ever compare Luis Arraez to Gleyber Torres, honestly, because Gleyber Torres ain't hitting over 300 every year. He ain't winning batting titles. This is a totally different player from an offensive standpoint. So I think it would be a good move. But again, not sure how willing the Padres are to trading him. The family, Pete Seidler, the former owner, died, and his wife and the whole family's like suing each other. So it's a big mess over in San Diego. So I don't even know how willing Padres are to move him. But to act like Luis Arraez ain't a good option for second base is silly. And I like Brendan Donovan. Brendan Donovan's really good. A left-hander, 28 years old, can play third base, second base. It would be a perfect fit. Would be a perfect fit in an ideal world. But again, I don't know how willing St. Louis is to trading him. I know St. Louis wants to trade Nolan Arenado. No idea how willing they are to trade Brendan Donovan. You got Brendan Rodgers on the Rockies, but I'm not in favor of that because of the Coors effect, and his numbers away are not good at all. On a one-year deal, though, I could definitely see the Yankees doing it. Stopgap. Kike Hernandez, another name. Stopgap. Whit Merrifield, another name, but he's old. So there's not much. There's really, really not much out there. The market is incredibly weak. Jorge Polanco, another name. Second base, third base. He had injuries last year. He's 31. Upside is he was good a couple years ago with the Twins, and he's a left-hander, which Yankee Stadium could inflate his numbers. But other than that, not crazy about it either. Another candidate that the Yankees could sign for a one-year deal stopgap. Because let's be honest, folks, if the Yankees don't sign one of these free agents, then they'll have to play DJ LeMahieu. They'll have to probably play him because you have Cabrera, you have Peraza, and you have DJ. And Cabrera, is like a utility guy, basically. He's good at third base, but he's like a role player. Peraza's not proven. He's a quadruple A player, which if you don't know what that means, he's a guy that's played good at every level accept the major leagues, so he's not proven, but he could break out and play third base or second. And then you have DJ, still under contract, who you're paying a good amount of money. So when you have those three options, it doesn't make sense to just have DJ on the bench. Even though, honestly, me personally, DJ is not playable. DJ LeMahieu can't start because of the injury history and the fact that he's old and he's kind of washed, and you're paying him $15 million next year. And he's not a free agent until after 2020. So the Yankees are kind of in a bind, and they're not going to cut the money. They're not going to eat it yet. I mean, Aaron Hicks, it got to a certain point. They wouldn't. I don't know if they got to the point yet where they're willing to cut him and eat the money. So you're left with two choices. Either you start him or you bench him. But if you bench him, that means you'd have Cabrera at third and Peraza at second. Or no, sorry, I'm completely forgetting about Jazz. You have Jazz at second, and you have either Cabrera or Peraza at third, which honestly, I'm cool with that. I can't have DJ LeMahieu playing. But knowing the Yankees, if they don't sign somebody else to play that position, they're probably going to play DJ LeMahieu. And that's scary. That's a scary thought. So for that reason alone, I guess you're going to have to sign a stopgap. But let me give you my idea. So my idea, I really like this guy. He's a Boris client. His name's Ha-Sung Kim. Ha-Sung Kim is an infielder for the Padres. And I really like him for a number of reasons. Now, you look up his numbers. They're not going to jump out at you. He's not a guy that's going to hit you 20-plus homers every single year and driving close to 100 runs. He's not that kind of player. But he is a guy that is valuable because he gives you a good mix of offense and defense versatility. And what I mean by that is he's an incredible defender. When the Padres signed him out of South Korea, they knew that's what they were getting. And a guy that can hit for a little bit of pop. His career high in home runs was 2023. He had 17 home runs, and he had 11 this past year before he got hurt. Shoulder injury that put him out the rest of the year in the second half. So he's got some pop. Doesn't hit for a super high average. He hit 233 this past year, but he hit 260 the year before, and that was him playing a full season. So that's kind of what you can expect, like a 260 hitter, maybe close to 20 home runs, and driving maybe 70 to 80 runs, and play all over the infield. Shortstop, second base, third base, and give you great range. Amazing range. That's what you can expect in Ha-Sung Kim. And I don't think he's going to get a long-term deal because teams are scared because of the recent injury, the shoulder injury, and the fact that he's going to be out the first month of the year. They project that he'll probably be back late April, if not the latest early May. And so looking at all that, I would say, okay, so I really can't see him getting more than a 2-year deal. Maybe an option thrown in there. And I think the fact that he hasn't been signed yet, and the Yankees haven't been linked to him, but I think that could be very valuable, especially if you sign him to, say, a 2-year deal with an option for a third. That's not a super long-term commitment. And he's young. He's 29. He's younger than the other options out there. And you can play him at third base. Move Jazz to second. But if Volpe needs a day off or Jazz needs a day off, you can easily plug him in any of those other spots. And I've watched his highlights on YouTube. His defense is incredible. And he's a good runner too. He can steal bases. So there's a lot of value in that. And I think he's going to be a shorter-term commitment. So I would jump on this from the Yankees. And people are going to ask, well, what do you do because he's going to be out the first month or two? That's not a big deal. He's going to be out the first month. And you figure it out. You have Jazz at second, and you let Cabrera and Peraza battle the third base job. And whichever one of those wins, you roll with them the first month. Ain't working out, boom, easy switch. put Kim at third, and then either Cabrera or Peraza goes on the bench. I think Cabrera is going to be like the utility guy that fills in here and there at different spots. So Peraza can be on the bench. You have Kim at third. You have Jazz at second. That's a decent infield. And then you factor it in with Volpe at short, obviously, Goldschmidt at first, Rice platooning with him. It's not bad. That's a better defensive team. Now, I'm not going to jump and say, oh, that's a way better team without Soto. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. We have to see how the season plays out. But talking defensive metrics, how that was such a huge flaw with this team in the World Series. The team got a lot better defensively. So that's what I would do. Because I don't think Bregman is going to sign a long-term deal. I really like Alex Bregman. I like Alex Bregman on a short-term deal. But this is it for free agency for Alex Bregman. So he's going to go all out. And that's really what I think. And I'm not saying that the Yankees are a better team with Soto. I'm not going to jump that far because I think that's a little drastic. And a little bit of like people coping. Soto's an incredible player, posted nearly an 8 WAR for us in 2024. He's a generational hitter. I mean, the walks, the eye for the plate, the power, hit to all fields. Incredible. 7.9 WAR. But I did the math. This is off this past year. So, and I don't really like projections, but Max Fried, 3.5 WAR, plus Devin Williams, 1.4, plus Bellinger, 2.2, and then Goldschmidt, 1.3. Add that up, that's 8.4 WAR. So the Yankees were able to get more WAR, adding these 4 players than they are if they just re-signed Soto. And this isn't Soto's best year as a Yankee. Now, maybe Soto will go out and post an over 8 WAR with the Mets. Maybe, but I don't know. Because Aaron Judge is the best hitter on the planet. And when you're hitting in front of Aaron Judge, that's going to help you out a lot. And it did. And that's not to discredit Soto as a player. He's an amazing player. Maybe I'll have to eat my words. Maybe Soto will be an 8 or 9 WAR player in the next couple of years. I don't know. But Soto's best year to date was this past year. And the Yankees, in terms of wins above replacement, already topped that a bit. But that's not me saying the Yankees are a better team. They still got to go out and play. But I'm just saying, in terms of what they were able to pivot and do, it's not bad. Doesn't give them an F grade by no means. I'd say it gives them a B. But if they don't address the infield, then I feel like that might lower it to like a C+. Because you can't have DJ LeMahieu playing. DJ LeMahieu is unplayable. You need to go out and get an infielder like Ha-Seong Kim, play third base. Boom, you improve the defense. That's your final move. You trade Stroman, Grisham, unload some payroll, and we're going to spring training, and we are winning a World Series in 2025. That's it. So that's my plan. But maybe the Yankees have something else up their sleeves. Maybe. Brian Cashman's clearly playing the waiting game. The market is so slow, like it is every freaking year. Hopefully players will sign soon. But it's crazy because I saw a tweet from Jeff Passan today talking about how basically when spring training starts, there's still going to be like a well over 100 players, major league players looking for big league jobs that are unsigned. And just basically saying how a lot of those guys are probably going to have to settle for minor league deals because teams are putting their foot down. They're not going to cave and give in and give players what they used to demand. They're just not. And players' markets are going up, up, and up, and up. And teams and their owners are saying, hold on, wait, this is out of control. We can't do this. This is getting ridiculous. So the next bargaining agreement, which I think they said 2026, but I could be wrong, but it's in like the next year or two. It's going to be very interesting because the owners are pissed and the players' union is pissed. So it'll be interesting to see. But the Yankees offseason is not done, but their pivot, I applaud them at least for their pivot because I don't know if there's a better pivot they could have done. So that's a wrap. That's the Yankee offseason. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you've listened to this point or if you listened at all, Please follow me, Yankees on Deck, on Instagram and TikTok. Unless TikTok gets banned, we'll see. But that's all I have for you guys today. Have a great rest of your evening, and hopefully you have a good weekend coming up as well. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great rest of your evening, everybody.